Let's talk about X2 Castle Amber by Tom Moldvay for Dungeons & Dragons Expert set, BX, Basic Expert. It also refers to the companion set. It says you can go and read that for stuff. This is a strange mansion adventure, levels 3 to 6. Trapped in the mysterious Castle Amber, you find yourselves cut off from the world you know. The castle is fraught with peril. Members of the strange Amber family, some insane, some merely deadly, lurk around every corner. Somewhere in the castle is the key to your escape, but can you survive long enough to find it? This module contains referee notes, background information, maps and exploration keys intended for use with the D&D Expert rules. Be sure to look out for other D&D modules from TSR, the Game Wizards. So, this is one of the 3 early haunted house, kind of mad family modules, along with or weird manor modules. Let's put that's actually better, isn't it? Teagle Manor and Beastmaker Mountain. And this particularly, it draws on 2 things. It draws officially on Clark Ashton Smith's Averoigne, as in there is a section set in Clark Ashton Smith's Averoigne with a permission. It also draws on particularly Nine Princes in Amber by Roger Zelazny, which I have actually reviewed on this channel, the novel. And there's some other novels that it plainly is referring to and touching on, Lovecraft and Poe particularly. And it spawns successes, and along with Teagle, less so Beastmaker. The fact that you get trapped in it by being trapped in mists, weird mists, certainly should remind you of Isaac's Ravenloft. And it's one of, along with Teagle Manor, one of the obvious inspirations for the excellent Castle Zinterland, which I've reviewed on this channel. It's 26 pages, plus I think technically it might be 28, because it might have the centre map might be not counted to the page count, plus a gatefold map of the main castle in blue ink. That is 3 wings around an indoor forest. The indoor forest with a portal and the portal to another place are both very Zinterlandish things. There's actually a couple of ways to get to other places, which I'll touch on. This is a really interesting module to review or discuss because it operates at kind of a couple of levels of quality. It's the potential and the basic ideas and the stuff being thrown into the gumbo are great, as in they are all-time great. The actual execution is often quite lacking, and I'll give really one of the, in some ways, less important but quite telling examples of what I mean by just the way the box text, and virtually every room has boxed text. The way the boxed text and the rooms connect and are explained is repeatedly very bad or comical. The room holds a single bed and typical bedroom furniture. The room appears to be empty. That's the box text. Except for the bedroom furniture, the room is empty. There's actually another really terrible bedroom, which I want to find. Room 28 bedroom. While this room looks like a bedroom for a cleric, it is much more lavishly furnished than is usual. The room appears to be empty. Non-box text. This room is empty except for the furniture. You don't know what the lavish furniture is or why it appears to be like a bedroom for a cleric. It looks like a bedroom for a cleric. There's lots of crosses everywhere, just in case. You also, if it's lavishly furnished, some of that is probably portable and takeable and would count for gold. You know, expensive coverings for a 4-poster bed or something. And this is a gold for XP game. So there's stuff like that where just it's weird and not really written up to be used very efficiently. But other parts of it are kind of okay. There's stuff like the entire section in Averoigne which is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, basically. Quite a lot of pages, to be fair. Is kind of interesting, but very, very thin. And the final quest ends with an instruction where literally somehow because the reason this the castle is trapped in time in the weird mists that you end up in is because of a curse, at least in part a curse laid on the last Prince of Amber or whatever, and he's buried in another kind of sub-dimensional, portal-dimensional tomb. And to solve the curse, it says, carved into the inside of the caskets are the words, "Burn the tapestry to break my curse." And if you do it, then that's the end of the adventure. I mean, technically there's a few things that happen afterwards, but the rest of the castle dissolves. Stephen Amber gives you lots of rewards. That's the end. And that's just so bad not the idea of the redemptive quest, that's quite good, but the actual specific thing is so I guess you'd be like, well, it's obvious, it's simple, and hey, BX was meant to be for kids, man. But you're talking about points a pretty adult module with a fairly punishing fetch quest, which I'll move on to. And for the punchline to be just burn the tapestry, I guess maybe the choice is, do the players trust the instructions or not? But it's not particularly deep or clever. Especially after you've done a bunch of stuff to get there. It's just a way to end the module. Now, as I say, and I'll bring up a few more oddities like that are weaknesses, but the general concept is great, and the encounters are great. Often great. There's a lot of really interesting encounters. There's a problem that they don't interact. But yeah, we'll flick through. So wandering monsters, you have a 1 in 6 every 2 turns for the main encounter area, the main places, and then separate encounter tables for Indoor Forest and Averoigne. And that's a D20 table. There are doppelgangers. There's living statues of iron, rock, and crystals. There's lycanthropes, Megans, who are a new creature here. Jen's Magica, Magic Men, I think is what they're called. And 3 of the Amber family, Mary Helen, Isabel, and William. And Isabel and William are both griefing mages or wizards, magic users. They both have Passball. Isabel is a 12th level, and William is a 10th level. And so they're going to come and annoy you. They're going to pop through doors. They're going to put up walls of fire, disintegrates, things like that. And Mary Helen Amber is a tough fighter. She is a 14th level fighter with 60 HP. They're all chaotic. All but 2 Ambers are chaotic. This is obviously the very detailed family living inside Castle Zintalan. Get some of its dynamics, I guess. That Gabor's gone for a far more undead feel there, obviously. But yeah, one thing is that that has been observed, it can be of strengths or weaknesses. A bunch of Amber members on the encounter charts and in a couple of other places don't have stated motives or interests. They're just for you to add into. These guys are chaotic. There's an assumption throughout the module, and this is good, that you're reaction checking everything. It says when you don't, which is good. And it's certainly, there's a point later when Moldvay says, you need to, it's actually, he's talking about when you're in Averoigne in a city, but he makes a general point about how you have to think about how to approach this, because if you start a fight, then you're going to get lynched, basically. And I think there's a good thing throughout the module, which, a good habit where he regularly assumes things can go more than one way. And a lot of the set encounters are modelled for that. But there's the thing where you've got to fill in some of those gaps throughout. So yeah, you go in, you wake up, and you're inside this foyer, having thought you're sleeping on a nice hill. You start in the grand salon. There is this is the first room, pretty much. You start in the west wing. There's no, even though there are 3 exits on the map, you come in one and you can't get out the rest. And one thing about the mists is you're told, you go in and basically start losing hit points, but preferably the characters won't die. This points to a different problem that's going to come up, which is Moldvay saying the players have to get to these things and have to eventually get out, or else they never escape. Though it's open, technically the kind of environment, the map is semi-open. There's a few ways you can go. You can kind of loop through this. This is actually fairly loopable. The Indoor Forest, you should be able to kind of loop around and walk around, though it's sort of tougher once you get off the path. It's designed to push you through the path, but there we are. Though there's some looping, and as I say, the map has a bunch of looping throughout. There's only one way to solve the major puzzle, which is to get through the particular portal in the dungeon to go to Averoigne to get the items needed to summon Stephen Amber's tomb, so you can go and release him by burning the sodding tapestry. So in that sense, and the fact that Moldvay knows this anyway, it happens, is he says repeatedly, you know, try to make sure this happens, or don't let the characters die here. Or eventually he says, if they don't have all 3 keys, maybe reduce the number of keys they need, because otherwise they, you know. And given they have to get all 3 keys, I think when I was first reading it through, I was like, oh, okay, so he's given them 3 places to get the key. It's like it's a 3-clue mystery. But it's not literally, but it's a 3-clue mystery in the sense that you can get the same MacGuffin in each place to let you advance. Which is, if you're setting up city adventures with mysteries, it's a good trick to make sure that the players can get not necessarily identical information, but overlapping information that leads them in the right kind of directions from multiple sources depending on their approach. And here I was like, great, but actually no, you need all 3, except you don't, because Moldvay just says make sure they have, as long as they have 1. So there's a sense here of, he's not running a straight game at his table. It's meant to be an experience. And I think this kind of connects, and this is one reason, by the way, I went when we think about X1 Isle of Dread, also by Moldvay, but with Zeb Cook, the much maligned Zeb Cook, very inconsistent, I think, Zeb Cook. There's reason to think it's either Cook and or his editors who make that actually a pretty readable module, because of both the box text example I've given and the way in which there's a genuine assumption by Moldvay that, I mean, I say this, I've recently reviewed Freedom by Cook and showed how loathsomely railroady that is in the worst possible ways, actually. But what I'm getting at is that you can tell that Moldvay's just put out, like, I just run this thing to get people from A to B. They have to go through all the things, and then they experience the adventure that I liked. Because it's technically set in the Gnome world, it's technically set in Glantry, in Mystara, but really it's about going through this separate environment and ending up in a sort of fantasy medieval France, and that's the end. That's the end of the story. Great. And you have to get there. And it's a shame that occludes the interesting environment, because the encounters are generally good. You meet your first, likely to be your first guy. He has some Megans with him, and he sets up, he's got a boxing ring in his grand salon, and he'll bet with you and honour the bets if you box his Megan. You can die, but you know, given your 3rd to 6th level, you probably won't if you're a fighter, which you should be. You've got a chance of knocking out the opponent, and that's great. You know, he'll give you money even for surviving rounds. You'll always earn money. You might lose net money by betting too much, but you'll always earn some money off him as long as you survive some rounds. If you last 2 rounds, that's it. At least 2 rounds. And again, you should, unless there's a very unlucky chance on the knockout kind of rule that he gives. There's a study with some Rakasta. Those are from Isle of Dread. They're like cat people. Dining room. There's a few things. There's a few rooms. The dining room is 1. I think there might be 3 actually. The dining room is 1. The reliquary storage is another. And I feel like there's 1 more that's definitely like this. Where you've got kind of B1-ish rooms where you just poke stuff and get random results, and that's fun. And it is kind of fun. So what I mean is here you can eat various phantom foods in this kind of weird ghostly feast that's going on, and they're kind of, you know, the onion, you make a save. If the save is made, nothing happens. If it's not made, you gain 1d4 hit points permanently. The roast beef, not magical, but tender, tasty, and pink. Green beans, not magical. Mushrooms and wine sauce, you save versus poison. If you save, you gain +4 on all future saves versus poison. If it's not successful, you die. Apple strudel, save versus spells. If it's saved, you gain ESP. If the save is made, nothing happens. Red wine, magical drunkenness for 2d6 rounds. So some have positive effects only, or at least maybe neutral or positive. Some have neutral or negative, or only negative. Some have positive or negative. It's fun. I think the fact is, I think there are 3 instances of this in a 70-room thing. It certainly pushes it on. You might call it the gonzo side if you want to say that, but it's the reason why I prod at that, especially in what's not an absolutely enormous dungeon, but particularly because you're actually going in between sub-environments. The thing I'd push at is that when there is nothing really to judge the random stuff on. It's fun once, but if you're doing it twice a session, I think you'll see players, I suppose unless their experiences are exceptionally positive the first time, you'll see players get very rapidly cautious because even if they're in good humour and good faith, most players want to succeed and want to advance. And stuff where they don't have information, which is the currency of D&D, is going to make them cautious correctly. Hall of Mirrors, linen closet, servants' quarters. These have Aranea, also from X1, intelligent giant spiders in them. There's a Monster Zoo thing going on. You know, the rooms next to each other. The servants' quarters are covered. There's see, they're fun though. It's a fun Monster Zoo. I mean, I say this in the sense that you're talking about all the stuff I'm mentioning is just on this wing here. Not even got to the end of that wing yet. There's a room where the floor is a massive green slide, and there's clings to the ceiling. There's a black. The entire ceiling is a dull black eye. It's a black pudding, and the one clear bit, the stone platform and chest, has a wet grey ooze over it. Now, I should say, the treasure is pretty good. 3,000 GP, 1,000 PP, staff of healing, and a sword +2, intelligence sword +2. Sorry, with detects magic, finds traps, and detects sloping passages. Incredible stuff, genuinely very, very good. Because if you think that's 13,000 GP and 2 strong items. So there, and the room is obviously weird. And in that sense, the fact it's a trap room, functionally, because it's a monster trap room, is clear. And so you've got to deal with that. And then you're trying to get to the items. Great. There's an Richard Amber the Lion-Hearted, who's been magically altered to have a lion head. And he might attack you. This is one point, as you're told. If he attacks, you're making a reaction check. There's an assumption on Moldvay's part that you might be able to chat with him, or you might be able to choose to. Now, one thing is, because in general, other than that he leads the recaster, he, as with many, not so much the boxing guy who likes just boxing, but like with several Ambers, these are interesting vignettes and ideas for characters, but either there's no detail, like on the Wandering Monster ones, apart from the spells, or it's very minimal, like here. And so you don't know what the character wants to do. You don't know how you're meant to run this NPC. There is an ogre in the master bedroom who's replaced her mistress. And it wants to be polite, but gets angrier and angrier. There's wraiths, pretty brutal for what might be, 4th or 5th level characters. Transparent ghostly hobgoblins. The indoor forest, you've got grizzly bears, centaurs, hawks, Isadora Amber, who is chaotic, Ragodessa, robber flies, giant rattlers, giant weasels. Now, the centaur, being intelligent and neutral, could actually be an ally here. So that's something which, though it's not made explicit, given that you're rolling reaction, you're meant to be thinking about motivation if you're reading your BX. So actually, there's a possible ally there. Isadora is just another griefing mage. She's an 11th level, and she has Move Earth, Hold Monster, Hallucinatory Terrain, Growth of Plants. She's modelled for outside. She has Sleep, actually, which, given that you could have 3 and 4 HD characters in the indoor forest, is going to be tough. This is something where you're kind of meant to go. You can try to break the indoor forest by going cross-country, and you're meant to. That's obviously something that you're meant to expect your players will do. It might be harder, there's a bunch of pit traps, but it would mean, if they successfully do it, avoiding most, but not all of the encounters. That could be good or bad. The encounters may have some advantages. The river is full of crocs. There are pit traps, which, does it give a... yeah, there are pit traps all over the place, and there a couple of the... just in the normal wood is still kind of the keyed encounters. So if you go through it, you'll get that encounter. But, you could avoid some. It depends how, you can cope with the other stuff. You've got killer trees, and you've got a troll under a bridge, and there's a billy goat. That's just a gag encounter, really. Squirrels with golden acorns as a reference, but they don't make the acorns gold if you take them from the place, but you can go and get all their acorns and then fight them. There is a giant amoeba in a well. Is it a well? Yes, it's a pool of water, sorry. There is an interesting one, which is a maiden and unicorn The maiden being a polymorphed young gold dragon, very young gold dragon, and they're kind of friendly, and they're expected to be friendly. They have money, but there is some stuff about if you talk to them, the gold dragon does not know how to go past the grey mist. She will not leave the indoor forest. So it's actually a fairly low value encounter. It's quite cool. You know, it's polymorphed metallic dragon. It's a unicorn. There's treasure. You could get information, but the information isn't worth it, and she won't join you. So I guess you can maybe recruit her to help you in the forest, but it's marginal. It's an oddity that it's a nice idea that doesn't go anywhere, like a few of the others I've mentioned, or at least it's very limited. You know, there's stuff that might be worth a laugh. There's stuff that's kind of curious. There's stuff that's interesting but doesn't do anything. A module that's like that particular thing, the idea of mega vignettes, not just Monster Zoo, but like weird vignettes everywhere, that works better is the Titan's Crown in Sword Thrust, which is a good module from Rolaids. One of the best Rolaids modules, actually, from the 80s. And I think there what you see is that, one, there is a logic for why it's so kind of vignette-y and weird, but also the environments feel slightly more complete and dynamic. Each of these vignettes works more, rather than like, oh, here's just a thing, it doesn't matter what happens. If you bother the squirrels and take stuff, then an Amber who has the head of a large black goat and is leading Rakasta riding Sabertooths and Lupins riding Direwolves come and charge you. So that's kind of a combat thing. And you kind of have a brief thing about Andrew David, André David d'Amberville. He just hangs out here and likes the indoor forest. It's not, you know, it's shallow, but you can add stuff. What you could see is that there is a lot of potential for you to add and develop this Castle Amber. And I think most people's Castle Ambers will have been using how fertile the kind of the basic soil here and the kind of the seeds in there are good, but you need to get the sun on it. You need to get the water on it. You need to put the effort in, basically. A few illusions along the way, more evil plants, Bloodstained Arch, which is actually one of those things where you want to fail your save as you get smashed by it, so you have an advantage in the next room. That's the western wing of the indoor forest. The northern wing here, the chapel, is, I mean, you just kind of wander around, and the room is the bedroom for the cleric is there. There's again a kind of RNG sort of like prod stuff and see what happens, and you've got a 1 in X chance of it being good or bad. You have the slightly mad, over insane Charles Amber. Now he's connected to, and this is the Poe reference, I guess, potentially. But you have Madeline Amber buried in one place, and she's trying to get out. And once she gets out, she wants to attack her brother who buried her, who's also in the same block, and that's kind of fun. Now you can't really interact very much with her, though. She'll be grateful enough to aid them. Sorry, only one in the chapel, so that's good. But if she sees Charles, she attacks. That's great. That's a good interaction. It's not super exciting, but it's a good interaction, good motivation. But if you go and see Charles, she will automatically escape and come and attack him. And though you could argue, but that's one of those dynamic sandboxy things, it's not. It's just a triggered encounter that's not very fun, as it doesn't add anything to stuff, you know, necessarily. I'd say Charles does have some useful stuff. Madeline is just an 8th level fighter. Charles is a 9th level mage with the Ring of Spell Turning, and in his hoard he has Madeline's old War Shield +1 and some gold, 5,000 gold. And he can animate dead. Now, he's not guarded. This comes up a couple of times as well. Slightly odd things where you occasionally get told, if there's a problem, this person will call for these monsters to come and help him. Usually that is not under the description. The order of battle stuff is bad. It's not under the Amber member. It's under the monsters. And here, I guess I kind of assume that if you bother Charles, that you should assume that some skeletons or the bone golem or the zombies in some of the other places come and help, but maybe not. It doesn't say so maybe I shouldn't assume that, really. There's then, in the evil cleric in the middle, cleric 14, Sanctum Sanctorum, Simon Amber. Cause Light Wounds, Finger of Death, Quest, which he uses to go and find the tomb of Stephen Amber. Now, why you want to do that, why he wants to do that, given that releasing Stephen Amber destroys the castle, I don't know, but there we are. Charles animates dead to help Simon, so there's an alliance there. Again, this is stuff which I think in Zinterland, a useful thing is that all the family members are collated into the back. The 60 family members are collated into the back, so you know, and that what they are up to and what they do is there as well as where necessary mentioned in the inline text. And this needs that. You're going to need, if you're running it, you're going to massively benefit, from two things that I've just mentioned. An amber list of the family members, adding in your own stuff that you've added for the Wanderers and for anyone who's not super detailed, and also an order of battle surrounding each of those ambers. And I'm thinking more about the set example ones who call in aid. The choir loft has a great thing, which is a keyboard to an organ without organ pipes, but the statues, who are cursed people, sing notes, so you can play. It's very creepy, very weird, very disturbing. And then finally, the east wing in terms of the main level. This is most of the dungeon, though it is not, you're only getting to half the module overall. It's about, I guess it's about half of the keyed areas, more or less, just over that, about 2/3. You have the disastrous throne room and the curse remaining, of Henry Amberville, who killed Stephen Amberville. Princess Catherine can be, if she finally manages to magic jar someone's body, she can cast a bunch of bad spells. In the ballroom, there's an error here, that it's clear that there are meant to be 3 white apes statted, because they're mentioned in the text and mentioned in the box text, but they're not actually statted elsewhere. He's neutral. The leader of these people, their court jester, who's been polymorphed into an ape and can polymorph other people. He is actually neutral and can react well. He will only attack if for some reason he thinks you're an amber. Otherwise, you roll the reaction normally. It explicitly says you can make friends with this guy. He could help you. He's got 3 apes. Again, the kind of potential isn't really pushed. It's something you're reading into it, but hopefully you are reading it into it. So in that sense, do you blame a module for not saying what the DM should always be doing and not mapping every possible consequence? Maybe not. But I think occasionally where it's come into Moldvay's head, no, this happened in the game we played, or something similar. There's much more of an attitude of, yes, this has got to be done. Then the library, you meet a good Amber. You meet Claude Amber, who's trying to redeem his family, and you can, on a deposit of 5,000 gold, in case you take stuff away, which is okay if you do. There's a curse scroll, there's a magic user elf scroll, and there's a piece of parchment containing instructions on how to escape the grey mist, which is to those who would be free. And this is basically, you have to release Stephen Amber by getting, and there's some notes on where to get this stuff. It's basically, you need to search first for the gate of the Silver Keys, and then you have to find some items, and you have to do some stuff. There's a card room where an apparition of Madame Camilla Amber, you can draw. This is one of the random ones. You can draw one of 10 tarot cards and have random effects from them, which is save versus death ray or die. You get a strength spell. You get a magic wand, staff, or rod chosen by the DM or at random. Things like that. In the centre there are some extra maps. You fight a frost salamander. There's some gold hidden under some snow in the room. That's kind of, this is a boring treasure module. BX always suffers from this, but you fight a frost salamander, or you can fight one, placed in the corner of the room beneath a layer of snow are 6,000 silver and 8,000 GP. I mean, if you're 4th or 5th level, you probably don't have a wand of treasure detection. Is that even a BX magic item? Yes, you can poke everything, but this is one of those things about, you're not rewarding necessarily skill in some of these cases, and the treasure itself is not particularly exciting. I guess you can just think in terms of it being 1,400 GP weight, so it's a lot of stuff, quite heavy to take away, but worth a moderate amount, 8,600 XP. The Frost Salamander is worth 13 HD. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the XP for that, but there's a Green Man, which is a Gawain and the Green Knight reference. There's a magical letter square. Oh no, that's that. There's two ways to get down to the dungeon, so there's a bit of looping there. The map and the way in which you can explore in different ways is real. It's there, and I guess technically you can go out one of the doors and then round. I don't think the grey mist completely prevents you from. It completely surrounds the mansion. It advances. I say that it does not. No, it does. It blocks off all the exterior doors, so you can't loop around the front even. But yeah, there's a couple of entrances down to the dungeon. There's all these ways round, but as I say, because nothing's really dynamic, and where there are orders of battle, it's not explained. It sort of doesn't quite work. You get gremlins introduced here, who are just annoying more than anything. They make things go wrong. They're more mischievous than malevolent. In the dungeon, there is another somewhat. Basically, it's. I'll get the. There we go. You can actually see it's that letter square. Basically, it spells 5 names of spirits, I think. If bad things happen, if you don't spell out a name, or if you're pressing random ones, good things. The affects of each misspell of each name are for the 5 different things: raising your wisdom, raising your saving throw, being struck blind, being transformed into a DM run werewolf, gaining charisma. 3 good, 2 bad, 1 very bad, 1 character death. This again, you have no reason to know why these would do this. They may be references to something, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's something where it's again, we're talking. I think that's for poke stuff to get random effects, and they're big random effects. There's Gaston Amber. He's neutral. He's mad. If you've been cursed in a particular way, you end up hanging out with him. There's a sort of invisible stalker. There's a brain collecting monster. There's a creation room for the Megan, which is impossible for you to know what you're doing to make them, but you can get a bunch of treasure. That's kind of lame. You know, this is one thing again about at the end of the adventure, if you solve it, you destroy the castle. That seems subpar, and you know, you're being told, no, please don't do stuff. Don't be excited by doing stuff, which is, I think, a bad habit. There's an alchemistry laboratory which you have to use knock to enter, and there's suddenly you go into a dream state which can take you into Averoigne. I think, is that the dream suggestions? There's a dream suggestions with D10 table, I guess. You could think of it as a D10 table, because there are 10 entries. Just to be clear, there's a long fall. There's basically a chance that it will be a good dream, bad dream, neutral dream. It's a chance it can become real if you fail a second save versus spells. A winged god or goddess visits you. You wake up with real wings if the save is not made. A dream that you're captured by lizard folk. You're put in display in an unknown city. So it doesn't matter whether it's real or not, but a passing magic user teleports you back. That's a bit weird and lame. A dream that you save the life of an important courtier in Glantry. But yeah, if real, that means you actually will be a lord or lady of Glantry. Running down a hill away from a boulder, but you get away. You go to Averoigne if it's real. Basically, again, it's a random table with 2 random rolls determining whether you end up having an effect from the random table that could be essentially neutral, could be good, or could be bad. And it's interesting, it's another way into Averoigne, but it's just as readily a way into a Lizardman city, which then you're not allowed to interact with, you just have to leave. Again, you're missing the opportunity there. You want it to possibly be a party-wide thing, maybe. It's something where, at least with the guy going to Averoigne, you're splitting off characters. You can reunite them later, that's not a problem. There's a slime worm with a lot of kind of not amazing treasure, ironically. There is, there's these 3 keys you have to get, these 3 500 GP silver keys. So they're worth treasure, but you have to get all 3 of them. And one is in acid, in a glass sphere in an acid. One is, I don't even remember the other 2. Basically, there's a bunch. There's a death demon. He sounds bad. There's a duplicate scroll. This is in the dungeon, remember. This is a 3 clue mystery in that sense, or 2 clue. You can get the same item somewhere else in the storage room. There's some hellhounds. There's an entrance to the land of the ghouls. That's obviously Lovecraft. You can go down and go and get to the ghouls, and you're encouraged to make it if you want. I was recently in a discussion about whether or not this was good. Is it good for DMs to mention content that's not in it? And I mean, it surely has to be. Basically, there's a difference between a DM not putting in stuff that is integral to the adventure and a DM saying, at different points, if the characters leave this adventure, they go to a different place, and this is what that place could be. Or, in some cases, this is perfectly common as well, they go to this module that is also published or is going to be published. And I think, if you bear that in mind, the idea that if you leave Castle Amber and go to the Land of the Ghouls, then that's a different place, and you can make that up if you want to, or you can just not let them go. I think you get that. I feel like Zintaland might have an example of that in it as well. The Gate of the Silver Keys, there's an Amber Golem you have to fight. The Amber itself is worth 5,000 GP, so good XP haul there. That's a 10 HD star. Quite tough, 3 attacks, 2d6, 2d6, 2d10. Basic obviously does have this, I mean, not that Advanced doesn't, but Basic does sometimes have these kind of like, here's just a big heavy monster who's hitting you a lot. With the very simple combat system, that's one reason why it's more fun, generally speaking, is when a Basic module, it's why the OSR loves this out of Basic. When a Basic module pushes you to roll reactions and determine interaction and stuff, that's more fun because combat in Basic is... AD&D combat is in many ways quite simple. In some senses limited, in a limited sense limited, but it's much more crunchy and with many more mechanical options and systemic options than Basic. Whereas Basic combat is, just fight, just roll dice, fight. There are options, but they're not very exciting. This guy attacks you straight away. He's attacking lots of hit points. You've just got to tough it out, and if you can protect your mage enough, get some spells down on the guy. Then you go to Averoigne, part 7, different wandering monster thing. This is, there are four named characters, a lycanthrope, who might be actually a named character if he is a later lycanthrope mentioned, some generic pagans who live on the edge of the forest who aren't the kind of semi-Christians who live in the place, phantoms and shadow. Phantoms there being an illusion creature rather than an undead, I think. Averoigne is similar to France during the High Middle Ages, 1100 to 1350. That's cool. He does mention the actual Averoigne has a bunch of other influences on it. A bunch of time periods, but this is just in this one time. And you can go to the different cities. There's 3 cities. I guess you could technically go off the map into the rest of this other France, but this is what you get. You get, in the middle, you do get a hex map of Averoigne, which is useful on a 12-mile hex. Perfectly usable. And it's fun, actually, that my whoever owned this before has actually, his party obviously went there because there's a bunch of hit points ticked off and marked down. Now here you don't get a very detailed hex crawl, and this is one of the most obvious places where you're talking about a underexploited resource, a really imaginative area, but very much underexploited. Is that you have a bunch of locations, but some have no detail and most have very little. So you're told there's these 3 cities and what they're like. You're told about the villages, you're told about the ruined chateau, also a castle chateau, and you can use Fausse Flamme and Solaire, the 2 of the ruins, as gateways to earlier times. So you could go to other places. Now, and yeah, you can meet Gerard de l'Autom. He could join you. He's a professional troubadour lawful who might join you. Gilles Grenier, who's a cursed alchemist wizard who could help give you stuff, but it might backfire. A sorceress who's a sort of Morgana Le Fay, but more Merlin in that hideous strength. So he is she's pre-Christian enough that she's not accused of black magic in this anti-magic place. That's a fun comparison. In fact, if we're going to go down the path of like what has he put in, it's the opposite of Glantry. Rather than a magocracy, it is skeptical of magic. And then you can meet the thief friend of the evil Bishop of Zim, who is actually a black magician who's tricked his way into it. And Jehan Mauvassar, is obviously what a name to his name is literally Mauvais to start with. He's a bad guy. But yeah, you're looking for a bunch of items here, and these characters can give you them basically. You can, at a road inn, you can gather some useful if you buy drinks, you can find some rumours that guide you around the place. And each of these items basically requires you to fulfill a quest, which is more or less interesting. You can go and fight Malachi the werewolf, the wizard werewolf, and then Sephora the chatelaine of Solaire, and a magic user will give you the enchanted sword of Solaire, +3/+5 versus undead. Automatic kills any undead it hits on a modified score of 18 or better. Detects evil, detects invisible. Fly up to 3 turns 3 times per day. And you get a scroll with fly spell on it as well from her as a reward. You can also, I think, you can attack her. He does say, maybe try to give a hint that this could be dangerous. She's a 14th level wizard with 2 guards, and she has a bonus ability to charm men. The Viper Circled Mirror, you end up in a town, and there's a speech going on from the archbishop in fact, and you need to help protect them against a colossus of undead being used as a titan, as a warlord titan by an evil wizard. And then this guy who's helping out will give you the Viper Circled Mirror, even if you fail, as long as you made an effort to fight the Colossus. This is the problem about kind of everything has to happen. So even if you don't win, you get the mirror anyway, don't worry, as long as you fight. And the Ring of Ebon, there's a really interesting thing where it says basically you need to negotiate with the evil bishop, who's a fake. He's not really a believer or anything. He is an evil magician who's tricked his way in. But basically, it's the potion of time travel. You need one of the options. If you can't get it off one of the other people you meet who might be more friendly, you can blackmail this guy. But you need to blackmail him in private, because in public it might create more of a conflict, because he's got to defend himself if you accuse him so that you can get his stuff. And so there are different approaches, but that's good. There's this thing about, for the ring, there's a very confusing thing. Generally, that the abbot of the monastery is cursed in some way and is the beast of Averoigne. But it's not clear exactly what's caused this and how the Ring of Ebon exactly connects to it, because the Ring of Ebon is described in a couple of places. That's just confusing. You'll have to rewrite that. But then, assuming you get all this, you can then go back. How do you get back again? So if you possess all of these things, if they don't possess all these things, they're trapped in Averoigne. Once these items are in their possession, the characters may summon the Tomb of Stephen Amber. And so you go back to, on the mirror frame, you can do stuff, and then you create a thing and you go back to the tomb. Great. Then there is, again, let's get the map out of the middle section. There is a not completely redundant set of options in this tomb. It's, there's some very slight options for how you go round. But yeah, basically there's a bunch of themed, again, vignette fighting rooms, a sleeping blue dragon, a flame salamander, a cloud bridge, which you don't want to fall off. If you fall off, you've got a 99% chance of dying, etc. There's just things that are themed for different elements or different environments, different guardians with different abilities. And then you meet Stephen, and then you burn the tapestry, and that's the end. Then there's some monsters at the end, which are okay. Grabgrass, Brain Collectors, reprints of stuff that's in X1 as well. Lupins and Rakastra and Megan. Megan are actually quite fun, just as a kind of golem. They're nothing. They're really nothing more than a kind of golem. Yeah. Is it good? Yes, it is. It's kind of inspired, but is it good? As a module, I think it's quite limited. It's pretty obviously quite limited from the stuff I've said. But as a thing to build or work on, there are very few modules which are quite as fun and funky. And so it leaves you, and hence why you get your castles into lands and all the many other homemade ambers I'm sure there have been. So when you bear that in mind, when you say this is so, how do you rate it? Well, it might just about fall into a nearly unique category. There's very few modules. I think Broken Castle, of all modules, a very different kind of module, is the nearest thing. Broken Castle, I've reviewed on the channel, is a virtually unusable, insanely brilliant module, which is just so detailed, so clever, so many ideas, so many environments and dungeons that are good, so much inspiration for how you build a setting. But as it's written, it just is basically unedited, and it's incredibly hard to use. And the fact it's not, you have to translate at every step stats from the D&D covert clone back into D&D. Anyway, that is a brilliant work, but as I say, unusable as it stands. Here you've got a similar thing where if you ran this, I think, as written, and you have just you'd be helped by the fact that the reaction check system is in place, and it's assumed that's what's going to happen. That's fun, and you're going to interact with people. But you're going to have to even there improvise loads to make those worthwhile, because what do half these characters even want? And then you're going to be having to force your characters into doing stuff, and if you're following the advice, actively just giving them gimmies and fudging to get them to the end of the module, because otherwise they're going to be trapped there, and you're never going to get away. You're going to be stuck in Castle Amber forever. So you're going to find it frustrating as a written experience. So instead, what you're going to have to do is change it, and at that point, maybe you're accepting it something more like how you're told in B1 or B2 indeed with the wilderness areas, or X1, that this is something that you're adding to. And if you accept that, and this isn't sold on that basis, if you're accepting that, then I think you can make not just a interesting module with good vignettes, but a genuinely great adventure. Anyway, take that for what it's worth. Tell me your experiences of Castle Amber, your thoughts, if you've read or run it, in the comments, and I will see you next time.